Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, my name's Princess Ronke Ademilui, and I'm the founder of Africa Fashion Week London and Nigeria. I'm happy that you're joining us for the launch of the Africa Fashion Week online. Starting with our webinars today, we have a host of incredible, amazing speakers. Thank you very much, and God bless you all. Enjoy the webinar, not seminar, webinar.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
So I am Anna Marie. I'm press director of Africa Fashion Week London, and I think we should just go around and introduce ourselves. To my left is Asiko. You want to say a few words?
Oh, okay. Yeah, my name is Asiko. I'm a visual artist who expresses his ideas through photography and mixed media. I'm from Nigeria, and but I currently practice in the UK. My work is about my culture and my heritage. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Nice. And below me, I have Kelechi.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kelechi Amadi-Obi. I'm a photographer here in Lagos, Nigeria, and I like to call myself a storyteller. What can I say? You know, photography, filmmaking, art generally, and stay safe and welcome.
And below Kelechi, we've got Samson.
Hey everybody, Samson Soboye here, your stylist extraordinaire. Coming to you live and direct from London. And a little technical hitch, but we've got over it. I'm more used to fashion, colors, clothes, silhouettes. Leave the computers to the technical people. Let's talk fashion.
And Samson's left, there's Michael, who's my colleague at AFWL. Michael, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad you guys are here. I'm the Global Strategic Partnership and Sponsorship Manager for AFWL and AFWN. So welcome.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Samson. So Samson, take over.
Take over, Samson. Take over.
Okay, so guys, we have got esteemed members of our African Fashion Week team here. Kelechi is based in Lagos. Asiko is based in London, but I've worked with both of them on loads and different projects. And Asiko, what makes a great image for you? Starting off with you, what makes a great image?
Oof. I think for me, it's about the story of the image. It's about what the image is trying to convey. So for me, story and emotion, for me, those are quite important aspects to an image. I think one thing that's always great is to have, you know, technical composition, lighting, and all of those things. I use all of those things to tell the story. But for me, it's about that emotion and the story and what are we trying to say with the image? That's what moves me in terms of an image.
And how do you employ clothes to make that happen? How do you use the role of the stylist to make that happen?
So usually, so what I will do is I'll work with the stylist and we'll design what sort of clothes we want. The clothes usually are used to tell the story as well. Every element in the image is used to actually tell the story of what we're trying to portray. So for me, the clothes come in as a secondary thing to feed the idea or to feed the story. So if I'm making, so right now I'm doing a lot of stuff about Egungun masquerades, and it inspires what all the images that I'm creating. So we will use inspirations of culture from actual Egungun masquerades and do a lot of layering, and that's all part to tell the story. So clothes come in the form of telling the story, evoking emotion in the images.
So for those that you don't know about the masquerades, it's a cultural kind of religious kind of thing that happens in Nigeria, an old sort of traditional festival, celebration, if you like, where people walk around in masks, costumes. Their faces are not seen. You don't see, nobody knows who these people are in these costumes. And sometimes they go into a trance-like state. I know in the village where my parents from, which is Ishara, Ijebu, they're revered and quite scared of these masquerades. I remember going to Nigeria as a child, not a child, I was a teenager. I went there and I was fascinated by these masquerade people that were walking around in these colorful, costumes, really elaborate costumes. And they was like, oh, don't look at those people. They're really bad people. They're not to be trusted, and nobody knows who they are. They're evil. They channel evil spirits. And I was like, wow. And the more they told me not to look at them, the more fascinated I became by them. They used to walk around. And I remember it was my first year at St. Martin's, and I went. And it was during the Christmas period, and I was really inspired by their costume and used it to inspire some of the designs I was doing. So guys, look into it, find out what these people are about. The costumes are very, very elaborate, very, very colorful, evocative. So I was never scared of them. So
yeah, sure.
so we look forward to seeing what your images,
having a technical
your images portray, Asiko, when they're done. We look forward to
that. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm currently working on them and looking to get them into a gallery. So yeah.
Great.
Definitely.
Kelechi, over to you. What makes the image for you?
Oh, well, I mean, I absolutely agree with Asiko. Image itself is a story that is being told, and for me, it's all about, what are you saying? So composition, lighting, color, all these are a means to an end. And that is one of the things I like really about fashion and fashion photography. It's also interesting in a very funny way. It's commercial photography, but at the same time, it's also art. It's one of those genres of photography where you can feel free to sell a pair of trousers, and on the other hand, you're talking about human rights abuse. In the same photograph, it doesn't sort of bring down the artistic integrity of the work when you're putting it in an editorial, for instance, and you look at it while you're saying, oh, look at these beautiful trousers made by this designer, you are also having another layer that is really telling a completely different story that is very cultural and, sort of soul searching. And that is one of the things that really attracts me to fashion photography. The way it sort of strides between those two worlds of commercial and artistic. I started as a painter in my career, and one of the things I found out was that, well, as a painter, the more you get very commercial, doing too much of commissioned work, you start losing a bit of your artistic integrity. When they say, oh, the work is too commercial and things like that. But with photography, especially fashion photography, you could do pure art that is at the same time, a piece of advertising, and well, those are some of the things I love. In terms of what really makes a great picture is a combination of both. I mean, you could have a very beautiful story you're telling, but visually it doesn't connect, and I would say, yeah, you might as well be a good writer, and just write the story, So you still need, to understand the basics of, visual impact to be able to let the story meet with the visuality of what you're trying to say to drive home the image visually. Yes.
So if I'm going to interrupt, the word impact is what I'm looking for when I'm telling a story. It has to have a visual impact. There's lots of images that are out there, and you see them every day, but something has to be arresting in that image for you to look again, look deeply and think, that looks interesting. That's caught my attention. What's that about? I have a question here from Kamari Adamui, who's one of our directors. I think it must be directed at you, Asiko. Are you concerned with the occult mentality that the negative connotation in the world of Africa fashion? Shall I read that again for you? Are you concerned of the occult mentality, the effect that might have, the negative connotation that might have in the world of African fashion?
I'm not even sure I fully understand the question.
we know that the masquerade is to do with the occult.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah. So the
Okay.
occult mentality, how does that affect negative connotations in terms of African fashion?
Well, here's my question. Why should it affect? Why should? Well, this is the interesting thing. I've been studying a lot of African history, more so Nigerian history. A lot of my work makes me look back. What I love is looking at how Yoruba history more so has been so influential in societies, even till now. You know, you can go all the way to Cuba and Haiti, and Yoruba aesthetic is still very present. Our culture, in my opinion, is beautiful. Now, it's been, in some ways, the media and westernization kind of puts down culture. But for me, culture is beautiful. And for me, I show that through my work. I don't think it has an occultic implication on fashion. And I don't see how, I think if you're taking inspiration from culture, you're looking at culture aesthetically. So you're picking cues from there. So when I look at masquerades, I'm looking at beautiful cues of how clothes are layered one on top of the other. Their use of color, their use of chaos in terms of how they put things together, but then it's still very much ordered and it's still very much beautiful in its aesthetic. So I don't see how, let's take the masquerades, how the use of that whole masquerade aesthetic would be negative in terms of using that in fashion. I can't place that connection, except I'm missing something in the question. But maybe you guys can elaborate more.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I'm trying to look at it from. I remember once I told somebody, "Oh man, I need to do a whole series on some of the gods." You know, Ogo, Shango, Amadioha. You know, and the guy was like, "No, man, don't go there. You know, those things are occultic." And I'm like, "Hey, dude, you know, can you relax? Okay, Ogun, Shango, Amadioha, these are all god of thunder. Now, a lot of us have moved on from colonialism to Christianity, and religion moves, but that does not mean that you need to throw your past away, where you're coming from.
Thank you.
Now, you can get inspired, you know, by traditional religion, your depth of your culture from the past, which some people still practice now. That doesn't mean there's anything occultic about it. For Christ's sakes, you know, the Thor, God of Thunder, is a member of the Avengers right now. You know, and you know, it doesn't mean that these guys are worshiping Lord Odin. You know, but it says a lot, you know, about the history and the past. You know, so there has been over the years, you know, through colonialism and stark, you know, brainwashing and how do I put it, the sort of bad imagery that is portrayed of Africa that makes the people believe that anything that comes from your past is occultic. Anything, now, if you bring a pendant that you've created that is inspired by, let's say, Ikenga, they'll say it's occultic. Meanwhile, they are wearing a necklace that represents, you know, old, you know, Western gods, and there is nothing wrong with that. You know, so I think it's about a kind of liberation that our people need to go through to be able to open their eyes. And yes, you can get inspiration from, you know, cultural things. That does not mean that you're practicing the occult. It is a recognition that it exists and that this is what things used to be like. Anyway, that's my take on it.
We should celebrate who we are as Africans,
exactly,
and not always look to the West to validate who we are. And I think that's one of the challenges. We're moving a lot forward with modernization, which is great, but we still need to understand who we are and bring who we are in terms of our culture with us, and not decide to say, no, that's not important. And I'll just throw in something. I believe culture, as any society, should evolve. So, you know, I love my culture and it should evolve with societies, but we shouldn't throw that away. So I did a project on female genitalia mutilation, and that's something obviously that we should leave behind. It's practiced very much in Yoruba culture, and it's something we definitely need to leave behind. But then things like how you respect our elders, how we build communities, those things are important, and they should be carried forward in in our society anyway.
Absolutely. You know, absolutely.
I've got a couple of questions here, and I'll take this one from Jennifer Ron. Thank you, Jennifer, for responding and coming in on our webinar. You're welcome. The question is, slow fashion is the future. Do you see fashion photography taking top place in a designer's budget planning? And if so, what ideas and platforms do you advise designers to use and explore? I'll give that to you, Kelechi.
Oh, well, I mean, you know, photography plays a very, very crucial role, you know, in the marketing of fashion. You know, you can't separate the two of them. In terms of platforms, you know, to tell you the truth, the world keeps evolving so fast these days. You know, at 1 minute it was print media. Now it's online, you know, maybe it's going into the virtual reality world, you know, but I would always say, you know, look at what is happening now and also try to predict what could happen in the future and be ready for it, but be relevant for what is happening now. I mean, if I'm looking at the Nigerian environment, for instance, you know, we don't have too many fashion magazines. Enough, we don't, you know, but I see that the market has evolved in such a way that all these designers are doing lookbooks, you know, that they use to expose their latest collection. And those lookbooks are getting into the blogs, into the online magazines, into Instagram and things like that. Those are sort of the main sources of exposure right now. I mean, we have a lot of TV stations. They have a couple of fashion forward programs, you know. I don't know how powerful and effective they are, but right now I see that people are engaging online so much more than ever before. And it's become a very powerful tool, you know, for promotion, especially for the fashion people. And I would always say this, you know, if you're a fashion designer, you have to always constantly think about how do you tell the story of your collection? You know, who is it for? What is the story behind it? You know, that is how you build a brand. You know, it's not just a skirt. What is the story behind the skirt? You know, it's not just a pair of slacks. What is the story? And that whole story, you have to get a stylist, you have to get a creative group to think about how to express that to the rest of the world. And that is the editorial idea or the creative idea behind your photo shoot. And whenever it's well executed, hey, right from the days of everybody getting their photo shoots into Vogue and all that, it has always been so important to say, look at this picture. It tells the story of the type of person that wears these clothes or what the designer is aiming for. I remember those days just flipping through those fashion magazines. Each advert is a full story, you know, and we should not ignore those type of powerful statements, apart from, you know, trying to demonstrate that your clothes are nice, you know, who is it for? Under what cultural background does it take? It's supposed to exist. What is it saying? What are you saying? Each time you wear an outfit, you're making a statement, you know, and what is that statement?
I'm going to take up on that point. You mentioned, Jennifer, slow fashion. Slow fashion is what I call African fashion anyway. none of our designers produce en masse. We don't have like a Primark situation set up there. So every part of your collection needs to be an important part of the collection. So you're not making it just as fodder, and you're not making hundreds of that one piece. So each piece is key to the collection, and you need to be photographing that, illustrating that with the good photography. We've got Instagram now, so that is a platform that you can use. Every picture on your Instagram needs to tell part of that story. Also, we've become a bit more egalitarian with the use of Instagram. So you don't need to be in Vogue or Elle or any of the higher magazines for you to be able to relay a story to the world. Yeah. So use the platforms, use the social medias to really tell that story and bring home what it is you're trying to tell the rest of the world, tell your clients, tell your future public that what you're about and who you are as a designer. So always use those platforms. And also if you can get in Vogue, I mean, by all means, get that page, get those pages and those editorials. They're very hard to get now, but if you can get them, then that's the story that you want to portray or relay to the rest of the world. We've got new designers like Kenneth Eze that's really tearing up the platforms now. Orange Culture, myself, and we're all doing our little bit to tell the story of what Africa and the diaspora has to say to the rest of the world. It's not just about fast fashion. It's not just about being in all those magazines. It's about we count as well. We have a different perspective, and this is what we want to say to the rest of the world. I've got a question from Jessica Burgess. Hi, how can I make, hi Jennifer, by the way. How can we make fashion a platform of multiculturalism across all cultures, to break down the walls we have with regards to gender, culture, and religion? This is something I believe we struggle with in South Africa. I'm a fashion lecturer looking to inspire my students with regards to this. So, who's going to take that question?
I think you should take it.
Okay, here we go. Multiculturalism. I live in London, and this city epitomizes what it is to be multicultural, cross genders, cross cultures, cross religion. Everything that exists in the world exists in London. So we are, certainly as African Fashion Week London, we're creating the voice for Londoners of African descent and Africans that are based in Africa. So our voice has for a long time not been seen on the world stage. So just in the presence that we have of the Africa Fashion Week, both in Nigeria and in London, our presence is now being heard. Our presence is now being felt. Africa as a continent is being listened to as a world force for change, for a world force for a different perspective on fashion. We now count, we now matter. The world has stood up and are now listening to what we have to say. So London Fashion Week have just announced that they're having a gender neutral fashion week as a result to the COVID situation. The menswear fashion week will no longer be holding. So they're beginning to hold men's fashion week and women's fashion week will be held as one fashion week. So it'll be twice a year instead of 4 times a year. I don't know how that's really going to go down, but that is the movement that's happening in London. Don't know so much if it's a world movement, but gender neutrality is what is being pushed as a thing. Men's clothes are clothes that women can wear. Women's clothes they're asking men to wear. So it's not something that has been played out for a long time, but now it's everyone doesn't want to be labeled as something. I know the artist Sam Smith is gender neutral. He doesn't want to be described as him or her. He just wants to be known as they. So lots of people are now not wanting to conform to being a woman or a man. If you now look at public toilets, they are gender neutral. I noticed in some of the schools I teach in now, there are male or female toilets that are gender neutral. They're just toilets. So it's a movement that's happening across many platforms and something that we're going to have to listen to and move with the times and offer that. Again, there's plus size models that are now wanting to be heard, wanting to be catered for. So something that maybe we need to look at as Africa Fashion Week, including plus size models, even transsexual models on the catwalk, because they are all parts of our society that want to be included in the dialogue.
Actually, now interject also, it just so happens that one of our web talks on the 19th of May at 3 o'clock is dealing with inclusivity and representation within the fashion and creative industry. And that's one of the things that Africa Fashion Week, London, Nigeria, pride itself on being representative of not just all of Africa, but trying to make sure it's representative of all aspects of the different, of the subcultures within Africa itself. And that's really important. Already, we work very hard in making sure that at Africa Fashion Week London, that we do have designers who request every single year to have plus size models also models who have disabilities. So on the 19th of May, we get to dive even deeper into that dialogue, whereby we have an incredible panelists coming from, so we're not just talking about gender, we're not just talking about culture and religion, but we're also talking about sexuality, as Samson mentioned about transgender, and making sure that there's an inclusiveness, there's a representation across the board, because especially when it comes to the creative industry, it should be the most embracing of all industries. I won't say tolerant, because I always feel like it's almost patronizing to use the word tolerant. Yeah. And so one of the things that AFW will always pride itself on is trying to be as inclusive and representative of cultures in general, all cultures across Africa, and championing designers and creators who are Africa inspired. Africa inspired, that's really important. And so thank you so much for that question, Jennifer. Burgess, you seem to have my surname. We might be cousins. I don't know, we need to check that up in genealogy. But so please make sure you come back on the 19th of May at 3 o'clock as we continue to dive a bit more into this topic of inclusivity and representation on fashion platforms.
Great. I have another question from Kamari. Did anyone else want to add anything before I go into the next question?
I do want to say one more thing, because it's very important that what you guys understand, that these incredible photographers that we have here, Kelechi and Asiko, who are incredible at their work and what they've been able to do in revolutionizing photography across the continent, but across the world. I mean, you will get to find out more about the art of image and what they've been able to do, to make people not get caught up in the cult aspect of the rich African cultures, but understand the beauty and changing the narrative. And so I know Samson's going to segue now into really having each of these photographers talk exactly about how they are able to take their craft and fine tune it and really create the artistry that people can appreciate and change the narrative of not just photography, but of Africa.
Thank you, Michael. Jennifer's also thanking you. She said they're great answers. She'll be there on the 19th of May. Thank you, that's done. Kamari's got another question.
I've got a question. I've got a question. So I've had the absolute pleasure of working with you, Samson, on photo shoots, and with you, Kelechi, on photo shoots. I have worked with you, Asiko, but not particularly on a certain shoot for our own pleasure, or for our own job, so to speak.
Yeah.
I've just got a question, because I've worked with Kelechi in throwing together some real last-minute shoots, real last. I'm talking about within the hour. Let's just pull something together. And I've also worked with Samson with slightly more longer, able shoots. Now, the question I want to ask is, the shoots that we pull together at last minute,
break speed,
how do they differ from doing a kind of proper editorial where you stop and think about what you want to portray, and or what the client may want to portray, and how does that, okay, the question I'm asking is, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the last minute quick ones with me? Or do you prefer the long ones that you have to plan?
Anna, I love your spirit of like, let's make this happen. So that's why, so the breakneck speed is like, okay, you don't even have time to think about it. We just got to. Sometimes they can produce much better results because you haven't even got time to ponder. You just get on with it. So the shoot that we're looking at, that I'm talking about, is one we did in the bubble pit. I call it the bubble pit with the boars. That was so last minute. I was like, okay, this is cray, but let's go with the flow. And it was the shoot we did with Angel, and that was such an amazing shoot. But it's kind of you need to be able to work with people that can work in that environment. And I'm just a person that loves the opportunity just to shoot. I'll shoot all day long if it needs be, because I love shooting. I love making the images, but I have the access to a shot. So it was the ability to be able to grab clothes at very last minute that made that happen. Otherwise, that could not have been possible. So
that's true. So Kelechi, what do you think? Well,
I've got two different workflows. I've got the very slow one where I ponder on an idea and I even sketch it out and try to control as much as possible every facet, of the creative process to bring out a predetermined visualization. That is one process. I love it. It's beautiful. It can be very rewarding when at the end of it, you start to bring out what it is you imagined. But, there is the other workflow that I love where I set myself up for failure.
Oh, you have little faith.
So I'm setting myself up. I say, okay, Kelechi, you don't even know the venue. You haven't seen it before. You haven't seen the model before, but get there and rely purely on all your 30 to 40 years of experience as a visual image storyteller and start to grab instinctively all the design elements and then go on a journey of discovery. And I have so much more adrenaline doing that kind of crazy stuff. I sort of developed that technique after I started publishing Mania magazine, where we in a week we must have a shoot, and we have an idea, but we haven't put it all together. And when the date comes, we say, you know what, guys, let's go. We haven't had time to go check out the location 100% and be absolutely sure, but you know what, get the model, stylist, let's go. And I found out that I learned a lot more from those experiences.
Those short quick shoots.
Yes, because what ends up happening, I always end up also creating stuff I've never created before because, I was not really influenced by what I had seen before, but I was being influenced by what I'm seeing right there, you know, and it always comes out beautiful. It's a very big risk, but somehow we manage to maneuver around. Because over the years, we've built confidence on the ability to use whatever is available to us, to also maintain a certain level of visual impact. Yes.
There's also a lot of things about spontaneity. You don't know necessarily what you're going to achieve. And there are other elements. When you're working with a professional team, the professionals know what they're about. But, the models that come at last minute, the celebrities that come at last minute. I remember the Burna Boy shoot. He was
yes.
Like that was...
I think we all remember the Burna Boy shoot.
Yeah. That really finished me. So I was like... just work with the flow and go with it. And that really tests your mettle when you're having to do things at the last minute.
I know.
They don't know what they want, and they don't trust who you are, don't understand who you are, they've never met you, but yet you're still having to put it together. So that's when you're like really tested and feel like, okay, just work with whatever you've given with, deal with the cards you start with and still make it happen.
Can I butt in? Asiko, I think with your beautiful images, you work in a completely different way, don't you? Do you really think about
Guy, I don't like stress. I don't like stress. Life is stressful, so I'm not gonna. To tell you the truth, I do agree with Kelechi. There's the two sides of the coin where spontaneity breeds a whole different set of things that you probably didn't even envisage, and you create beautiful, beautiful new things. It's great. I find those sorts of shoots are happening more with maybe a client or maybe a group of people. Maybe you guys have put something together. So it could be with a magazine. Actually, I find magazines are the culprits for the let's do it in a week and all of that. The personal stuff that I do is a lot more thought out because I'm working, maybe I'm putting stuff together for a gallery. So there's a lot more thought and a lot more pondering on what I'm actually doing. So I think as an artist, every artist has to be flexible and adapt within both of these spheres. It's just, I think as a creative person, you just kind of have to do that. Because we're working with so many different people and we're putting ideas and things out into the world that we need to be flexible in terms of how we actually create them. Sometimes there's not that much of a budget, but you've got a great idea and you need to be able to put it out. Yeah, it can be stressful, but hey, life is stressful as well. So yeah, so my personal projects, those take a bit more time, but magazine stuff I find is a bit more crazy and that way inclined. So I can imagine that you guys, that's what you guys are going to do now. I can see it now. It's like, oh, this person's here, let's shoot this in a week.
Yeah. What do you mean a week? A week is long planning for me.
What?
A couple of hours.
We're shooting tomorrow, don't you know?
Wow.
Tomorrow.
Quick question, guys. I wanted to ask.
I've got a really good question from
Yes.
Jennifer Ron. Fashion photography in the West used to be about the model, and that increased the value of the clothing they wore, like Naomi Campbell, for example. In Africa, do you prefer working with certain models, and do you think it's an ideal way to go for Africa? Now, I think Jennifer's talking about the celebrity model or the named models. I personally, I take my inspiration and cue from the model, and then I think I've got to shoot that girl. I've got to shoot that guy. They are amazing. Let's see the beauty I can get out of them. I know I can make them look better in the clothes I put them in. So a lot of my inspiration comes directly from the model. They don't have to be supermodels. They don't have to be necessarily agency models, but the models really inspire me first and foremost. And then that's when you get the other part of the team in, the glam team, the hair, the makeup, the manicurist, all those people add their bit to enhance the beauty of the model. And then it's left to the photographer to pull that beauty out of the model to then create the image. And that's the image that we've all contributed to as a team that we get to see. So, but also, Naomi, if you're out there listening, I will never say no to working with you. Come through. I love the opportunity.
I know Kelechi's got a story about Naomi because he's told me. What was it that you said? So what's your story, Kelechi?
Well, the truth is that, a supermodel, let's be straight with it. These are top professionals who understand their craft and who have earned, their medals through the years of understanding. And, I've worked with some really top models and then also worked with beginners. And the difference is huge, really. A model in front of you and you're not getting a back picture. All you need to do is to tell her the emotion you're looking for. And it's like a dance, It's quite entertaining.
So what's this Naomi story?
The model. Yeah. Oh, well, Naomi came to Nigeria and we were all doing this. I think it was Arise Fashion Week. And But then, there's so much going on, backstage. And I was like, what is going on here? You people need to bring this girl. Let me photograph her, because she had all these guards and people around her. So once she came back from the runway, I just grabbed her and put her in front of me and took a picture. And then I sent the picture to her people. The next day, she was like, oh my God, where have you been? Why haven't we been shooting? I was like, that's what I've been saying all this while. Anyway, but she's really sweet. She's been really, really promoting, African fashion. It's amazing, the wealth of, her stories are unbelievable, really, through the years of fighting inequality and trying to put the Black model in front, of the top magazines. It wasn't easy at all. And it is that sort of fight, that fighting spirit, that I think we need to encourage. We don't have too many supermodels in Africa. Why? Because, well, they have to move out of Africa to become supermodels.
Yeah.
The economy and the fashion industry is not $2 or $3 million, as models, and that is for those big brands. Once you represent those big brands, you're moving towards becoming a supermodel. The economy and the industry hasn't graduated to that level yet. But we still have a lot of good talent. I mean, a lot of times, the art of model scouting itself becomes its own reward. I mean, just looking at, sometimes I look at a girl on the street and I'm like, what is this? This is a man, or Naomi Campbell, or Alec Weck right in front of me. Then I start to imagine what I could turn them into, and sometimes that happens, and you create something really amazing out of this girl that you saw on the street, It's a completely different way to go than when you're working with a very, very, very well-established, well-experienced model. They are two completely different things.
I worked with Valerie Campbell, who's Naomi's mother. I did her for a cover of Pride magazine and the Fashion Story. And she was the loveliest woman I've ever worked with. She was so, so nice. And it made the cover and 8 pages. And the magazine actually hated the pictures, although she loved them. And they were like, oh, they called me in the office to say, why didn't I give her big ball gowns? And I just said, look, that's Naomi's division. We're going to leave Naomi in that lane. Her mother needs something more calmed down, toned down, and she loved the clothes. And they said, oh, well, we're not going to work with you anymore because you didn't give us you didn't give us Naomi's looks. So after about 2 years, I never worked with them. I was like, fine, they didn't understand it, but they came back to me eventually. And I started working with them again. But yeah, she definitely was a lovely, lovely woman. And talking about the rise of the African supermodel, we need to foster the beauty that is in Africa. I mean, the agencies are starting to go there now and use a lot of our top models. There's Maya Nicholas is from there. She's now top model based in New York. And there are lots and lots more models coming out of Kenya, South Africa. So it's a great place. We just need to nurture the industry in Africa so that you can actually make money from it. Still a new kind of thing. Still encouraging our beautiful girls to be, and beautiful guys to be doctors, lawyers, accountants. Yes, they can do that on the club. If you can
I think the career of the models is a direct reflection of, how do I put it, the level of prosperity that you can find in that industry. You see, the models are there to advertise products.
Yeah.
So if we would need to produce more in Africa. You need to have, cosmetic giants creating cosmetics in Africa. Fashion giants, huge deliveries, mad chains of stores, delivering these things. Once that starts to happen, then it becomes easy for them to pay premium, because, well, they're making money, So that for me is one of those things. Because at the end of the day, people will have a lot of talent, but then the talent keeps flowing into Europe and United States, into the West, because if they really want to make it and make the big dollar, they have to leave Africa, And what is even happening with our modeling agencies here is that, well, they're now scouting models and having them do work in Europe and the US while they are still, signed on to the African agencies.
Yeah.
So they're expanding their market. But I do believe that in the near future, by the time the industries grow, I mean, I'm very, very optimistic. Looking at how the music industry has completely exploded down here, we could use the same formulas, in the fashion industry and see how that completely, utilize.
What do we need to make that infrastructure work in Africa? What's lacking?
Well, one of the biggest things, as far as I'm concerned, is the distribution. You see, distribution is everything. I mean, you have to have the product, but you have to find a way to get it, to the final, consumer, in style, quickly and at a good price, And what is happening in Europe is that you have effective distribution of fashion products. It is the shops, it's huge mega shops, it's the delivery systems and everything. Down here, we don't have, it's just probably the past 10 to 15 years that we started having shopping malls, and we are nearly not to the level where you would say there is enough of that. And those fashion brands haven't built their capacity enough to supply those things. People are still wearing a lot of imported stuff here in Africa. If our designers can clothe the people in Africa alone, they will have so much more money. It will be huge, Yeah. But they are not getting the people clothed. I mean, it's, how do I say, tons and tons of outfits coming from China, that people are wearing. These clothes are not being made in Africa. They are taking the African designers' designs and they are going to create and manufacture there. And for Christ's sake, even the wax prints that people are wearing that is associated so much with Africa is Dutch wax. Yeah, these guys are bringing their stuff from the West, and we are consuming so much of it down here. The industry will only grow when we start creating and producing here in Africa. So we have to ramp up our capacity.
Kelechi, quick question. I want to ask, because indeed there's so much sort of appropriation that happens there. As a photographer, for both you and Asiko, how important it is for you to receive that sort of freedom as photographers to be able to promote Africa, and championing Africa in the jobs that you guys get, especially from European brands. How important it is for you guys to have that freedom to be able to add that element of Africa in that job. So, do you know what I mean? To attract the business, to draw people back to Africa.
Oh, well, the truth is that what is African? It's a very big question. It's also how you ask the question is what is Chinese and what is European, what is Japanese? It's a constantly evolving thing, if you get what I mean, So you look at Lagos, for instance, and you get the yellow Danfo bus, for instance, okay? And with the 2 black stripes. Now, you put that up. Well, the Danfo bus is a Japanese car, it's maybe a Hayas bus or a Volkswagen bus from Germany. You just painted it yellow and put 2 black stripes and it becomes a Lagos culturally African. I don't know if you get what I mean, So at the end of the day, it's an evolving thing, and we have to be in a constant state of redefining it. And that for me is what art is. It is a lot of times it is not an answer to anything. Sometimes it's the question, you're asking the question is, who are we? Is this us? And it's a constant process of answering and asking those questions that becomes the flux of contemporary culture, So we in Africa, and we are trying to, or our brothers in diaspora, we're trying to explain to people what it means to be African through our work, and we have to be at the forefront of that discussion because we live it and we feel it, And I always tell people, why do we have to keep complaining about how we are being portrayed? It doesn't make sense, you know?
Yeah.
If you're in a room and people are talking about you in a way that you do not like, what will you do? You open your mouth and you defend yourself,
Yes.
you know? So,
Yes.
and what we do as photographers with shooting fashion, shooting portraits, creating these, you know, artistic works that want to express who we are trying to redefine, you know, the way the world wants to see Africa. And we are using contemporary, you know, material. We are using photography, which in itself is a piece of technology.
Yes.
And we are dropping it inside the web, which is another highway of technology, to speak the language that the rest of the world can understand. It is absolutely a must if we want to be true to ourselves, to incorporate our culture and who we are, what we see around. But the thing is, defining what that is, what is African, it's very relative, you see.
Yes, yes.
It's in a constant state of trying to discover what it is.
Yes. Asiko, do you mind answering that and giving your little take on that question?
I think for me, it's very important that in my work, actually, my work is an expression of who I am. It's part of my journey. So as a person, I'm rediscovering what it is to be African, and in that, it's feeding into the work. It actually parallels what my actual life is. So for me, photography is very much part of my life. It's very much an extension of who I am. So when I create, the idea of being Yoruba or being Nigerian is in the work. And when clients hire me to create work for them, either European or Nigerian or African clients, they are asking for my unique way of seeing the world. And because they want my unique way of seeing the world, Africa is there. It is very much prevalent there. So I don't really need to think about it. It's just there. And how I create and how I see the world, it's just being African. It is me. So I don't really need to think about it that much. But they come to me for my vision. And they come to me to, you know, craft a story for their brand. And in that way, Africa is very much there in what I do.
If I can take up on that, I've only been there more for events, so I've never really lived in Nigeria, but Nigeria lives in me. So it's really exists in my DNA and exists in how I perceive myself. I wear a lot of the Dutch wax as an expression of who I am, and although it is Dutch, I add my own interpretation on it. The Dutch don't wear it. It's Africans that wear it. So I feel as an African, it actually makes a statement to the world that who I am, where I'm coming from, and what I want to say about who I am. And I love to work with African Black models, with dark-skinned models that have beauty, models that can really convey beauty in just the way they stand, their poses, their expressions. And we, like Kelechi had mentioned, if people are talking about us in a way we don't like, it's up to us to stand up for ourselves. We've never really been accepted in London Fashion Week. It's only now that Black models are getting seen on the international runways in such force. And that's only to be a good thing in the advertising, on the television, in the films. We are now a force to be reckoned with. That's taken years, you know, and it's really, we're not going to go away anytime soon. And can only get better. I was thinking about Indian models, Asian, like most of the Miss Worlds have been from India, and they would make very beautiful models. Culturally, it's not what they're about. They're not around, they have Indian Vogue, but it's not for us to talk to them about what they're doing. We just need to push forward what we're doing so that we're never seen as a trend or a fad or a here now, gone tomorrow type of thing. We're not just a flavor of the month or year. We need to be really strong in promoting daily, monthly, yearly, who we are as people.
And guys, how has working with Africa Fashion Week, London, and particularly London, being that it's here in the center of Europe, how has that been, how has that sort of relationship really sort of helped in, you know, in your specific promotion of all that you stand for, and that being Africa? How has that been for you guys?
Anna, can you take this one up? Anna?
Well, I specifically want to hear from the photographers. It's for the photographers particularly, because they, you know, these guys are two gentlemen who are so prominent in their careers and so highly respected that I know, Kelechi, you travel all over the world. I know Anna was telling me this story where she was in Brazil. She was living in Brazil, and she went to this little camp. Anna, please tell us this story.
Yeah, no, I told Kelechi this last time he was in the UK, that I was in Salvador, and in Salvador they have a Nigeria house. I actually think it's shut down now, but it's kind of like a museum to the Nigerian Africans that were, you know, brought from Africa to Bahia in slavery times. Anyway, they had this museum there, and there were two massive images or paintings on the walls. And I sat and looked at it. It was like a Lagos traffic scene, and it was at night, and it was all very impressionist and, you know, lovely. And I turned around and looked at the other wall, and I said, "Oh, beautiful pictures." It just so happened that they were painted by Kelechi. It was like 10 years later, I actually was sitting down with the artist that actually painted them. So I actually never knew that you were actual artist.
Yeah,
until I saw some of your work, and and it was just crazy. It was such a surreal moment. That
So how does working with AFWL, Kelechi and Asiko, how has that really, what has that done for you in promoting Africa and promoting, and particularly you know, taking photography of, you know, of whether it being fashion, different aspects of fashion, and bringing it, you know, merging these two great worlds together, being in promoting what it is that you stand for?
Well, I mean, I attended my first time. I think that was last year, and it was beautiful. Really, I was quite, you know, thanks for bringing me over. I was quite impressed, you know, with the variety of work, with the models. Everything was really, really beautiful, and that venue was something else. You know, I couldn't stop shooting those editorial. I think I became a bit of a nuisance backstage.
I think we all got told off, didn't we? Stop stealing the models! I was like, Kelechi, don't worry about it. Who do you want now?
Yeah.
Always a pleasure and never a chore.
Yeah. But it was absolutely, I mean, you can see I was having so much fun, you know, like, you know, a kid in a candy store. I mean, it was so colorful, it was beautiful. And to tell you the truth, that is it. You know, you need to announce yourself, you need to make yourself heard, you need to express yourself on your own terms. And, you know, having that show in the middle of London, in that venue, and for me, those are the kind of statements. You don't need to tell anybody that there is talent in Africa and that we are stylish. You don't need to, you say it, you know, through a fashion show. You don't need to wait for, you know, the London Fashion Week to get you invited. You do your own and you invite people. I mean, and that is how people get to see. You don't need to be apologetic about who you are. And for me, those are very bold statements. You know, it sort of reminds me of Spike Lee, when Hollywood wouldn't employ those black actors. And he said, you know what, you know, well, to hell with Hollywood, you know, I'm going to start making my own movies. And I mean, I was looking at him eventually get an Oscar, and that made a lot of sense, you know. And he, if you look at the whole list of top actors that came out of that movement, you know, from Denzel Washington to, I mean, you just name it, you know, the people that he brought in eventually became the superstars on mainstream Hollywood. So I think doing this Fashion Week now in London is the right way to go, you know, absolutely, unapologetically, with as much venom, you know, you're putting Africa on the map. And
Thank you.
I absolutely appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you, Princess Ronke, for making this happen, Princess Ronke.
And I know I just want to mention that I know Asiko. When were you at AFWL? Because you had a different kind of experience, because you were grabbing our audience members, weren't you, to photograph?
So I was very interested in how people express themselves at Africa Fashion Week, and I think it reminded me a bit about, you know, when you go to church, like an African church, you know how people put themselves together on Sunday, you know, they're very glammed up, but it's slightly different from the way our mothers and fathers did it. It was more, it's very trendy, but it's not trendy as in London trend. It's very personal, trend driven. So people are pulling stuff from European context, they're pulling stuff from African context, and they're mixing it together. So you have these very, very stylish people. So I was very interested in speaking to people and photographing and doing some portraits of people that came to Africa Fashion Week. So I think that was the first time we connected, Anna.
Yeah, it was either 2017 or 18. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember, but it's 2017, 18, around that time. I think it's very important for us to, wherever we are, to as everybody has kind of said, tell your narrative, and, you know, put a stick in the ground or a stake in the ground and say, this is who I am. I'm proud to be African. I will, you know, wear the African colors, and wherever I am, I will be that way. And it's a form of expression. I mean, you know, Nigerians, as we know, we're very loud, and we're, you know, with how we dress, with who we are, and we don't apologize for that. And I do. And it's funny, the older I've got, the more Nigerian I've become, which is quite interesting. You know, I'm a child of both cultures. You know, I lived in the UK, and I've lived in the UK for quite a while in my life, but I did live in Nigeria till I was about 18, but I'm embracing more of who that is, to be Nigerian. And I'm expressing that through my work, through the things I do. And, you know, those values of being a Nigerian are beautiful. And those are the sort of things I will pass on to my children. So yeah, I love what you guys are doing, and, you know, how you're expressing what it is to be African in the diaspora in London, and, you know, the space it is in central London. It's in Covent Garden. You don't get any more central than that. It's great. So, you know, keep flying the flags and keep doing what you're doing, and, you know, more of us will keep swarming towards you and creating great stuff together. So
thank you, guys. Thank you. Jennifer Ron has a question. She said, I'm creating my online shop with Shopify now. I have never liked the images on online shops. Can you comment on how to go ahead? Should I stick with what is being done, or have you any other ideas how else we can showcase for sale? So she's trying to change up those, you know, traditional images on online shopping, and she needs your expertise as the photography extraordinaires that you guys are, how to change so she can make some money.
She should fly Kelechi from Nigeria to come and shoot this stuff. You should fly him.
She's also going to need a stylist. Put the color.
That's right. We need a stylist also.
Together.
Down there. Sits down there. Hire him as well.
That's right. And also, we have another question here, whereby, you know, it's, as we all know, we're in quite this calamity here with COVID-19, and everyone's really uncertain about what's going to happen. And so people are concerned about a couple of things. Want to know, the two greats here, two things. What's keeping you guys inspired? First question. And second question for you, what do you think is the future? What is the future of photography after, and that's the two-part question, after COVID-19 and in general? Who wants to go first? Kelechi, please.
Okay, well, I mean, to tell you the truth, the art of creating has got two parts. You know, you've got the part that is really extroverted, which really requires like an orchestra of stylists, makeup artists, models and stuff. There is the other part that is very introverted, which is you digging deep into yourself and thinking up ideas and working on the images, editing and things like that, that are very insular. You know, for me as a painter, you know, it's you against the canvas in your room, your studio. And so in these times of, you know, I put it, isolation or solitude, we are digging into the other aspect of our creativity. And I've been quite busy, you know, throughout the COVID-19 thing. And if you ask me what is the future of photography, I tell you this, you know, I don't know. I mean, technology will shift. You know, the means of disseminating and distributing these images will change, you know, but there is one thing I know for sure that will not change. It is the ability of people to think and generate concepts and ideas. There will never be a machine that can do that. You know, people will always need the artistic eye, you know, so good old, you know, self-development will always keep the photographer, you know, relevant for, I don't know how, you know, long, maybe 1 million years, if humanity is still around by then, you know. But, you know, post-COVID-19, you know, I think people are going to be doing a lot of things online. That's what is going to happen. People are realizing how powerful it is for you to stay at home. And, you know, so people are going to install much more boisterous internet capabilities at home so they can work from home. And the whole idea of people working from different and collaborating. I mean, look at us doing a Zoom conference. I mean, people are going to start to exploit technology a lot more. You know, that's the way I see it. So for photographers, online businesses are going to explode. There'll be more demand for good photography because, well, there's only one quality globally, and it is world quality, you know, and that will push the need for imagery when there are so many more online businesses. So I think it's going to come out well for image makers.
Thank you.
That is my prediction.
Thank you, Kelechi. Asiko?
I think at this time there is a lot of introspection, or I would hope there's a lot more introspection as a creator. You know, what are, you know, I feel this is a good time for people to look at what are you actually creating? What relevance does it have? What story are you trying to tell? What you're creating, is it legacy stuff? And when I say legacy, does this work? Is it just a passing thing which is now, or does it live beyond you? So it's good that we make money from what we do, but does this thing live beyond me? Could I pass an estate of images, you know, to my kids? And does that have value in terms of the work, the artwork? So I feel, I mean, I know I've been introspecting, and then I'm also keeping busy as well because I've started, you know, creating sculpture. So I'm looking at different ways of creating things. I've started doing a bit of painting, and I've kind of started to dive more into mixed media, which I used to do, but I kind of abandoned. So I think at this time is a good time for any creator or artist, even if they're not getting work, which is understandable at this time. It's a good time to sit down and start thinking about personal projects, and very personal and honest projects, which can really develop their voice and who they are. You know, the internet is plagued with a lot of noise, as you can see. But if you want to create something which is lasting and something which is strong, it has to come from you, because nobody has your experiences and your narrative as a person. You know, people try and say, well, how can I get ahead? Create something which is you, which is strongly you and relevantly you. It will stand out from everybody else's, because nobody has your experiences. So it's always good to be introspective at this time, and, you know, and look for sources of inspiration. And it doesn't have to be, you know, for photographers. I mean, when I'm inspired, I'm looking at old art. It could be old Yoruba art from Ile-Ife, you know, which I absolutely love, or from Benin, to old Renaissance art. And those are the sorts of things that will inspire what I do. So you don't have to look at photography. There are other things you can look at. What was the second question? In terms of, was it COVID-19 and
post-COVID-19?
And the future? I don't know. I honestly don't know, because the internet has changed the game, essentially. It changed the game, you know, about 20 years ago, about how we consume photography. And, you know, iPhones changed that game as well. Well, not iPhones, smartphones changed how photography is created and disseminated. The important thing is, again, it still mirrors my first response. There's a lot of images out there. There's a lot of talented photographers out there. In my opinion, it's not that hard to make a pretty picture. It's actually not that hard these days. Understand composition, understand light, you'll get it. What is important is to create something which is you, to create something which is distinctive from everybody else's. That is how you stand apart. So even when the future changes in terms of how the technology that we use and all of those things, one thing, as Kelechi mentioned, would never change: the artist at the center of the work created. And the voice of that artist will always be an artist. So, you know, some of us we're visual artists, and we can express ourselves through, it could be through pictures, it could be through a canvas, but that person at the center of it and the work they create is what will stand out in a future of tech and everything. Still very much the soul.
And as you guys talk about, you know, you mentioned about the legacy and the legacies left behind. It also, you know, very much how we here to champion Africa, that how looking at how your work has affected the, you know, the impression and perception and narrative of Africa is very much part of that legacy. So that's very important too. And Samson, as a designer, how the future of photography affects you as a designer?
Well, I need the photographers to help document what is fashion. For me, there's always been a very distinct difference between style and what is fashion. Style is more long-term. Fashion is transitory. So a stylish image can still look stylish in 20 years. I'm looking at the images from the 50s of the new look girls in their big skirts and tight in waist. They still look stylish. I look at the work of, say, Decatur. I look at the work of Malik Sibide. They're the old African photographers that have stood the test of time. So I'm looking at, yes, I want to do some quick images that just keep me in the flow, but I also want to do things that are really beautiful. Even a year later, you think, wow, that was a really great shoot. I still love the way that looks. Some of those pictures that we took randomly and quickly at Freemasons Hall still look great, even though they weren't planned, they weren't, you know, storyboarded, mood boarded. Just the spontaneity of it. It really captured the moment and captured an essence, and it will last the test of time. But that comes with working with someone that knows how to capture the moment.
Yes, and Anna, as the creative director of FW, how influenced are you by what's happening in photography, and especially by photographers like All Friends, Kelechi and Asiko, and what they're doing in terms of changing the face of Africa and the many faces of Africa, I should say.
It's not influence. It's just so inspired. I'm inspired by a lot of photography, and I'm inspired by a lot of virtual reality art as well. And I think that's just crazy amazing. I know Asiko and we had a conversation, and you introduced me to a few artists like Vince Fraser and people like that.
Mm.
When it comes to working with photographers like Kelechi, I can look at his past work, and I look at the images that we're creating there and then, and it's not that I see a progression. Sometimes I just see he's so versatile. That you know, we could have quite a staged photo shoot. Do you remember the Kelechi? We did a photo shoot with Misty, like the
Yes.
the day after the Burner Boy shoot, and
Yes, yes.
even though you just can't take a bad picture of the girl at all, you know, and compare those photographs to the angel shoot that we did a few months ago.
Yes.
It's like another. It's like a you know, I don't know. Maybe that was the venue. I don't know, and the kind of lighting that we had going, the ambient lighting we had going on. But
no, I absolutely I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and pictures that we took in Freemasons. There's you can always kind of see a photographer's fingerprints. Like you can tell. Oh, that's an Asiko. I know, because I know that's the kind of how he kind of shoots. Oh, that looks like a Kelechi, because I can see some things that I know that he likes to do with lighting and things like that. But on the whole, what inspires me is the way photographers evolve and try new things with their lens and with lighting and with composition and with styling and
technology.
You know, it's like Asiko. When I see your photographs, they're like artworks. They could be paintings. You know, Kelechi's, they're like a snapshot in a dramatic moment in time, and I don't know where you pull all that drama from.
It has a cinematic feel to it.
Yes, yeah. It could just be a sunny day, but all of a sudden you've got moody clouds and. Okay, I can see the cloud there, but
that's cheating with the technology. It's called Photoshop.
But let me ask you, Anna, you mentioned something. You mentioned something so incredible that you were able just now being able to clearly distinguish the Kelechi and the Asiko, you know, exactly, which is amazing, and the inspiration. Right. Now let me ask you, Sam, because as we're slowly wrapping down now, guys, I just want to ask, is it the model that takes a bad photograph, or is it the photographer that takes a bad photograph? Now let's get behind that question. Come on, let's find out. Because I know for a fact we have an aspiring photographer who posted a question about how to get, for people who want to get started, you know, in the business. And I think we need to first answer this question. Is it the model that takes the bad photograph, or is it the photographer that's responsible for that bad photography? Let's go on.
Both of them.
Don't bring me into this.
Yes.
Absolutely nothing to do with stylist.
Well, the truth is that, yeah, you could have a photo shoot fall flat on its face if you have a terrible model, and that the model can suck all the life out of your photo shoot. But you know, at the end of the day, if you want to put a proportion of blame, you would have to blame the photographer more.
Yeah.
Because then the photographer, if he's faced with a very bad model, then needs to turn the model to a mannequin.
Yeah.
You know, and start to manipulate and still create something good. You know, I'm saying this because sometimes I'm working with people that are no models at all. It's just regular folks, you know, but you still get a I remember last 2 years I was in my village and I decided to make a portrait of my mom. My mom is like 85 right now, so she was like 82 or something then. And I looked at her portrait and I said, my goodness, I have all these old people in the village. So on Sunday, I rounded up all these 80-something-year-old women and I said, look, don't go out of your Sunday clothes. We are doing a photo shoot in the middle of the village. So I start to shoot these people. And just the raw emotion coming out of them, they're not modeling for me. They're just being themselves. Brought out the most amazing, you know, images that touched people deeply. So so what is really a bad model? You know, I mean, it's about not being in the moment, you know. But when people adjust themselves, you will always get something beautiful out of them. I mean, one of the old ladies was like, wait a minute, why am I here? Are they sharing food? I was like, so I said, what? She started laughing. I took that shot, you know, I put it on Instagram, and I'm getting this kind of reaction from it, much more than pictures I've taken of celebrities with 2-3 million followers, if you get what I mean. And so you see, so for me, the blame, I believe, should stay more in the photographer. But yes, a model can put you in a tight spot.
Asiko, would you like to say something?
I think echoing what Kelechi has said, the photographer is the director on the day.
Yes. Yeah.
So all bucks fall with him. So if a shoot doesn't come out well, kind of he has to be, he's accountable for that, you know, especially when it's a client and they're paying for it, or even if it's a personal project, essentially the buck stops with him. So he has to find a way to connect with the model. Maybe the model is having a bad day. Look, everyone's human. And one of the things about being a photographer is to be a bit of a humanist, to connect with people, to bring out the best in them for the photographs, to make it work for the photographs. So, you know, being a photographer, I was a bit of an introvert, and I still am. But I've had to be more, find ways to connect with people, to bring out the best in them, to make them feel at ease with me and with whatever's happening. So for me, it's important that as photographers, we can really get the best out of the people who are in front of us and make great pictures out of them.
Yeah. So guys, we've learned some amazing things today about the art of the image. And one of them was very important, that a few things that these amazing photographers have talked about is how important it is that the legacy, think about the legacy that you want to leave behind, but understanding that the creativity never ever stops, especially during this time. You have Kelechi, who's an amazing painter also. You have Asiko, who also does sculpting. So they continue to work on finding sources for creativity, and you should never ever stop doing that. And understanding that the future for photography, while no one knows exactly what the future will be, for sure, you have to keep understanding that the creativity is what's going to keep you to keep the drive going, keep the momentum going. And the designers, very much, as Samson Soboye just mentioned, Samson said that, guess what? The photography is very important in understanding exactly where fashion is going in terms of the future of illustrating and campaigns and as of Jennifer Run asked the question about even in terms of a shop window, having to make sure make that image not just your typical or traditional image, but you want it to be unique so you can attract the right amount of sales. So for all of you guys out there who are aspiring or established photographers, I hope you guys learned something today that was so very important and very key. And also understand that part of your legacy is part of, especially as photographers who are African inspired or of African heritage, you have a responsibility to continue to champion and changing the perception narratives of Africa, and understanding that the constant evolution of Africa in terms of style, in terms of everything, the culture and what people might appear to be scared of. There's nothing to be scared of. It's part of our culture, and we must celebrate that and embrace that through photography, and continue to allow the creativity in photography to continue to evolve, also embracing technology on the whole. We thank you all so very much. I know I'm now going to leave for each panelist now to say their thank yous, and then we'll get ready to close this web talk. Please, Kelechi.
All right, please, people, it's been nice having you. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And I'm sure, you'll move on to greater things today, 1 or 2 tips from here. And stay safe. Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We appreciate you. Thank you for you guys organizing this. I appreciate you. And please stay safe and flatten the curve. So stay home.
Tell them.
Samson.
Okay, so tune in to the next one. Thank you for tuning into this, and I hope you got something and got some insights into that. We're all about leaving a legacy. We're all about inclusion. We're all about extending the narrative. So have a voice. Come in and say something. Come in and comment. Do join us again, as I said, on our next one. And thank you guys for joining us, letting us share the insights of your photography, you know, with all our supermodels, our backstage people. So yeah, we're looking forward to bringing you a next one soon. Good luck to you guys in Lagos, everyone else out there in London. Look forward to the next one.
Anna?
Yeah, so I was so delighted with the pair of you, or with all three of you actually. It's such a pleasure to have you all in my living room and talking about photography, and I can't wait to get on a shoot with you again, Kelechi, and Asiko. We've got to do something. Yeah, but you know what? I won't be last minute with you. We can plan it for a couple of years. It's fine.
We'll even give you a mood board.
Yeah, let's start with that, shall we, Samson?
Yeah, we'll start with a mood board.
And of course, we have to have Princess Ronke Adamaloui, who is the founder of Africa Fashion Week London, Africa Fashion Week Nigeria, Africa Fashion Week Online, who has been so gracious in making this happen. Princess Ronke, please close us out.
It's been amazing. I've just been listening, and to Kelechi Amadi-Obi, who we call Uncle K. Well, the models call him Uncle K in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Asiko. Thank you very much. I'd love to do something with you on Queen Moremi, but that's we'll talk about. Yes, we'll talk about that on another day. Samson, my brother. Oh, thank you so much. Samson's the head stylist of Africa Fashion Week London and hopefully Nigeria soon. So thank you guys. It's been amazing. We look, and our audience as well. Thank you for zooming in. And we look forward to, well, we can't see you, but we look forward to hearing from you again during our next session. Thank you very much.
Yes, guys, please tweet. Thank you. Please tweet. Let us know what you guys think of the web talk. The next web talk is tomorrow at 3 p.m. and you will hear a lot more about what happens backstage with the models. And Samson Soboye is going to be a moderator tomorrow. And this is where you read all the aspiring models and the people who want to hear the tease of what happened back at AFWL. Join us tomorrow. It's going to be incredible. And on Thursday, 29th, that's what we have. We're going to have the biggest leaders in the industry, from the British Council, the Mayor's Office, South Bank Centre, Victoria's Art. We're hoping to have a surprise guest on board. We can't say anything yet, but you don't want to miss it, because you will find out about what these leaders are doing in the industry right now to help to keep all the creatives inspired and motivated, and letting them reassure them that after COVID-19, the systems are still back in place to keep everything going, all right? So tweet, please continue to retweet, and join us for tomorrow and Thursday, 3 p.m. It starts at the same time. Samson, want to say something?
So come in, tune in at the same time tomorrow. Let's see what these models have to say, okay? Going to be talking to them, finding out about what happens backstage and what inspires them, how they've been keeping well during COVID-19. And yeah, we're just going to have a little chat. So come through and say your piece. Come through with questions. Thank you all guys that have been questioning us. Come through tomorrow with more questions, and then we'll get answered tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you all so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.